Thank you. Hi, everybody. I have a confession to make. When I first started out working for Cheetah Conservation Botswana, I was rubbish at tracking cheetahs. Thankfully, a couple of years into my placement, I had the privilege of working with the Kalahari Sand Bushman trackers. And every day I would go out into the bush with these guys, day in, day out for weeks on end, just tracking cheetah spoor. Now, when I'm talking about spoor, I'm talking about wildlife footprints, not the plants getting jiggy with it sort of spoor. And thankfully, after spending weeks on end with the Kalahari Sand trackers, I became a lot better at tracking cheetahs because these guys are absolutely incredible. They're known all around the world for their abilities at tracking wildlife, and they are incredible. They can look at what I can only describe as a smudge in the Kalahari sand and tell you not only what species it was, but when they'd been walking there. Even if that track was a couple of weeks old, even if it had been rained on and half of the track was gone. If they saw a clear track, they could also tell you whether it was male or female and even what specific individual it was. So they could tell an individual animal just by looking at the footprint spoor. It was unbelievable. Now, we work with the Kalahari Sand trackers with a lot of our different programs, but the one that we're using them, that we work with them the most with at the moment is our Communities for Conservation program. Now, this program's main mandate is to protect the wildlife corridor that links the Central Kalahari Game Reserve and the Kalahari Transfrontier Park. And this is a beautiful wildlife area. There's all sorts of different species of wildlife that move through this landscape back and forth between the reserves, making use of the beautiful pans and the water holes in this lovely landscape. Unfortunately, this landscape is under threat from expanding agricultural areas. So our work in this area involves a very multifaceted approach. So we're working with the sand communities that live in this area and trying to encourage wildlife-based economies. We are working with those that choose to farm and helping to capacitate them in more sustainable farming practices. And we're also working with the policymakers that want to expand these agricultural areas and convert these wildlife management areas into fenced cattle farms. Now, a few years ago, we brought on a PhD student. Her name is Guillen, and her work has been to look at those complex interactions between the wildlife and the livestock in that area, as well as the different types of habitat. And she has worked with the Kalahari Sand trackers from that region to help get population densities and look at wildlife hotspots within that corridor. And we're using that information from Marie's PhD to help inform those policymakers so that if they decide that they do need to convert some of that land into wildlife, where are the areas going to be that's going to have the least impact on the environment and can be the most sustainable? Because we're trying to change the mindset so that when policymakers are thinking about land use change, they're not just thinking about getting more land for agriculture. They're also thinking about the wildlife, they're thinking about the habitat, they're thinking about the sustainability and the consequences for human wildlife conflict and all of these different factors that are involved. Now, when Marie was doing her PhD, she realized that there was a big concern with the sand communities that the skill, this indigenous knowledge of tracking was disappearing within the communities. And the community members had told us that they really wanted to facilitate the transfer of this knowledge onto the next generation. So we partnered with this tracking guild to do tracker training sessions. And Marie has, working with the trackers, has helped conduct 3 of those tracker training sessions just in the last 6 months. And they've been a great success. And they've involved youth from the community, they've involved CCB staff members, even staff from the Department of Wildlife and National Parks who all joined in to help hone their tracking skills, because those tracking skills are not only used for population monitoring but also for problem animal control when there's conflict, and also in anti-poaching efforts as well. So to be able to increase this amazing skill and to let more people grow in this skill just means that we can all do our jobs to protect wildlife even better. Now, Marie utilized the incredible knowledge of some of the elders in the community, some of the master trackers. And master tracker is a title given to those trackers that are performing at the highest level. And one of her master trackers is here to send a message to you guys today. His name is Njo Kao, and he really wants to say hi and show off his English skills for you.
So, guys, I'm master tracker. I was working with Marine long time, 4 years old. I know Cheetah people from Marine. I am working with them, share the schedules with them, and even to take a little trip to involve other things. We are together. I want to continue working with them.
Njo Kao lives in an area where there's not a lot of employment opportunities, so he really appreciates the work that CCB provides him to help us track wildlife in the Kalahari. And I think he appreciates it almost as much as we appreciate him and his incredible expertise. But sport tracking, of course, isn't the only kind of tracking that we do in our work with CCB. We recently started a program with the Texas A&M University's Innovation X unit, looking at creating innovative devices to help mitigate conflict with large carnivores. And working together with the Innovation X postgraduate students, the team of students, as well as our CCB team on the ground and farmers that were experiencing high levels of conflict, we were able to come up with a few different devices that we are now trialing in the fenced cattle ranches in the Huntsy district. One of the coolest devices that we're trialing now with this project is GPS ear tags that go on the cattle. And those ear tags can give the farmers a live, up-to-date look at where their cattle are. That's really important for conflict because it means that they can protect vulnerable stock. They can investigate if an animal's behaving in a strange way. They get an alert if it goes outside of their farm, so if it's stolen or anything like that. And if an animal dies, they can go and investigate the cause of death quickly before scavengers come and destroy all the evidence. So this is really important for farmers to be able to identify accurately the cause of death of their livestock so that cheetahs and other carnivores don't get blamed for things that might have nothing to do with them, like snake bite or disease and things like that. So the Texas team came out last month. We are now trialing the devices to see how they hold up in the harsh Kalahari conditions, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to roll out the rest of the devices later in the year. Hopefully we will have an update for you when we see you in October. Of course, the ear tag GPS trackers aren't the only GPS tracking we do. We've been collaring cheetahs for research and rehabilitation for a very long time. And in October and November, we were lucky enough to catch 2 cheetahs, a male and a female, that we put collars on. The female was the first female cheetah we'd collared for research purposes in over a decade. They're quite hard to catch, female cheetahs, so we were really thrilled with that. And the male cheetah that we caught, we named Geo, after a 9-year-old lad from the Netherlands who raised the money to pay for that GPS tracking collar. Now, the research team were really great in sharing all of the GPS points with the rest of the CCB team. We were all really excited to see where they were moving. The female was showing some really interesting behaviors, and that data was rolling in. And then 3 weeks after Geo was collared, his GPS points stopped moving. And our staff, of course, rushed to the scene. Drove for over an hour, trekked through the bush in the middle of the night on a Sunday evening, and all of us were just hoping for a report that's, no, the collar's, I found the collar and everything's fine, it's just malfunctioned, or, you know, just hoping that something had happened to the collar and that Geo was going to be okay. But unfortunately, our staff got to the location and found him dead in the grass. And it doesn't matter how long we do this job, it's when you invest that much time and energy into an animal like that, it's really tough on the staff to lose them so quickly. The one consolation was that he had seemed to have died from natural causes. The conclusion made by us and the Department of Wildlife was that it was probably a snake bite. So it wasn't, he hadn't been shot, he hadn't been poisoned, he wasn't caught in a snare. It was none of those anthropogenic threats that we so often have to deal with, which, you know, was slight comfort. But it just kind of reminded us that cheetahs have got it so hard naturally, even when you don't take into consideration those human threats. People, you know, assume that they're a top predator because they're big cats, but they're not. They're quite small, they're very timid. They get outcompeted by lions and hyenas in the protected areas, and they get pushed out into these farming areas, and then they have to deal with all of the human-induced threats that comes with sharing the land with people. And as heartbreaking as that experience was for us, it just solidified our resolve to keep doing what we do. You know, this is why we put so much effort into this work, because there aren't that many cheetahs left and they do need our help. So unfortunately, the anthropogenic threats came to light just a few weeks ago, and I'll pass over to our Hansi Camp coordinator, Max Ciele, to fill you in on what happened there.
Hello everyone, hello WCN. This is Max from Cheetah Conservation Botswana in the Kalahari. We would like to thank WCN for their continued support to carry our research in the Kalahari. In our last report, we indicated that carnivores are doing well, the population is stable, and these are the good news to us as researchers. Even though we have bad news, where we recently had an incident where a cheetah mother with 3 cubs was collared in South Africa, and then this cheetah crossed into Botswana, where along the way she died. We were informed of the incident by our colleagues in South Africa, and then we rushed to the scene where we tried to catch the cubs, which were still dependent on the mother. An incident happened, and then because there's a lot of poaching going on between the two countries, we suspect that somebody could have put a snare there, and then the mother was caught and then died, and then the babies were still there, you know, idling trying to find the mother. And then we put up traps. Likely we did not find any cheetah movement within the farm. We were doing patrols like early morning, in the evening, and there were no signs of cheetah tracks within the farm. And this is a serious concern between the two countries, because people are poaching cheetahs from Botswana into South Africa, and then it's a business now, and it's a serious concern that Cheetah Botswana, as well as the government and other security agencies, have to come up with strategies or any other way to try and stop this poaching that is happening between the two countries. We would like to thank everyone for their continued support, WCN, and we hope to meet you soon after this COVID thing, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Max is so humble, he failed to mention that he was one of the staff that was mobilized to go down and try to rescue those orphan cubs. And he traveled all the way down to Verda, which is on the border between Botswana and South Africa, and that whole section of land is a real hotspot for poaching. This is the second incident that we've been involved in just the last few months, and the only reason that we knew about those cheetahs dying was because they had GPS collars on. And so in recent times, all of the cheetahs that have been collared in South Africa and have moved over that border into that area, they've all died. So that, of course, makes us wonder, well, how many other cheetahs that didn't have GPS collars on have also died? So as sad as that incident was, the silver lining, and in this job you always have to look at the silver linings, the silver lining of that situation was that it really motivated our team to start making a plan to go and work in that area. Now, we are not experts in anti-poaching. That's a whole nother level of work and a completely different kind of work that we are used to doing. But what we are experts in is engaging with communities. We're experts in engagement and awareness, in helping improve perceptions about carnivores and about wildlife in general, about working with people so that they understand the importance of wildlife in the ecosystem. We're experts in dealing with farmers and helping them to protect their livestock so that they're not losing livestock to carnivores, so that they can coexist with these animals. That's what we're experts in. We've got over 18 years experience doing exactly that in the Western Kalahari. So what we're looking to do is to expand those activities in this area, because we know that by doing that we're going to improve that poaching situation just by improving the attitudes within those communities. We are positive that it's going to make a difference in the poaching, because these things are always all interconnected. But it's a really isolated area. So Max had to drive 6 hours from our already isolated Huntsy field camp just to get there. He then had to drive 2 hours to get the cell phone signal to call in with a report each day. So it's incredibly remote, and it's it's a totally new place for us. So that means we need resources to be able to pull this off. We need new staff, we need new vehicles, we need accommodation in that area so that we can start to do this work. And how intensive the work we do there is all dependent on the amount of resources that we can secure. WCN has been incredibly supportive of our activities from the start. We would not have been able to achieve half of what we do at Cheetah Conservation Botswana if it wasn't for WCN. I'm talking about the staff, I'm talking about the network, all the supporters, and you guys that are watching. We want to say a humongous thank you for all of the support that you've provided us so far. We love you guys, and we'll see you soon.